Hello, welcome to this week's Texas Alliance for Life update. I have the honor today of interviewing two of our Texas Alliance for Life staff members about the very controversial video that went viral of Paxton Smith sharing about the heartbeat bill and her views regarding that bill at her graduation ceremony. And so it's been something that we've dialogued a lot about. I know that we've seen it a lot in the news as well. And so I'm honored today to be here with Kate and Rachel. And I want to hear from them. They're part of the same generation. They're Gen Z women, just like Paxton Smith. There is something unique about Generation Z. I'm a mom of Gen Zers personally, and I tell my kids, you guys are awesome. I expect great things from you. And as we dialogue about this today, I think you're going to get a glimpse of these two amazing Generation Z women. And they're amazing beyond just where they fall in their generation. They are just amazing in so many ways. So you're going to get a glimpse of that today. But I do think that's a commonality that I see between you guys and Paxton and this generation as a whole. You guys are vocal. You speak out about what you're passionate about. You have strong ideals, and it's commendable to see you guys really having a maturity that I think is very refreshing to our society as a whole. And so today we're going to hear from Kate and Rachel. Before we dive into the topic of talking about Paxton Smith's speech, I want to take a chance today to give Kate and Rachel an opportunity to tell you guys a little bit about who they are. And then we're going to share a little clip of a response that they put together on their own time this last weekend. It's a response from a peer to Paxton Smith about the video that she shared. And so we're going to show you that in a second. But first, Kate and Rachel, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about your background and why you're here, why you're passionate about this cause.
So I'm Rachel Schroeder, and I just graduated high school 2 weeks ago, and I'm a Texas state captain with Students for Life Action, where I've had the great pleasure of testifying on one of the pro-life bills this session, and also being able to help organize lobby days to gather teenagers like myself down to the Capitol to make their voices heard, to be able to give their input into the legislative process. So that's something I've taken a lot of joy in, and I've also, throughout high school, competed in swimming, speech, and debate. I've been a national finalist in persuasive speaking there, and I'm just cross-country and track. And so I think that, in general, my abilities have kind of come together around the pro-life movement because it's maybe one of the things I'm most passionate about in life, to stand up for the preborn, stand up for women who are in struggling situations. And so I've had a lot of fun this legislative session standing up for that, standing up for what I believe in. And so I think it's just so important for young people to make their voices heard. And that's why I think that conversations like this are really important, even when people like Paxton maybe disagree with us. I think it opens up the door for healthy dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. How about you, Kate?
So my name is Kate Creasy. Back in high school several years ago, I was also a national finalist in persuasive speaking, but most recently, I'm a new college graduate. I studied communication and political science at Angelo State University, and I'm the top graduate of my class there. I was also president of honors, and outside of that, I spent a lot of time working on human rights issues. It's probably the thing I'm most passionate about. I'm actually going to law school to study human rights law, and my human rights involvement spanned everything from undergraduate research on the security crisis in Nigeria to hands-on work for human rights issues in the state of Texas, and then even interviewing activists who are also involved, or researchers who are involved in human rights on an international level.
Amazing. I didn't realize some of those things about you. I learned something new today as well. It's fascinating. You girls are amazing. You're young. I can't even believe all that you've accomplished already. And so I'm just excited that our viewers get a chance to know you better today. Before we dive into our questions, I did share that they worked this past weekend tirelessly on a response video that perhaps you've seen on multiple websites. I know we've shared it on Texas Alliance for Life's social media platforms, and it's been shared in other places as well. Why don't you take a look at that? It's a great setup for our conversation today, and then we'll see you right back here after you view it.
Hi, my name is Rachel. Several days ago, Paxton Smith, a high school valedictorian from Dallas, dedicated her commencement speech to why women should be able to terminate their pregnancies. As a high school graduate myself, I have a different take. I do want to preface this, though, by saying that in a way I do admire Paxton's boldness by speaking out on something that is available on the internet for anyone to attack her over. However, Paxton does not have credibility simply because she's a young female. She doesn't represent many Texas women. Here's why. Paxton said that new abortion restrictions in Texas would limit women's ability to decide when to bring a new human being into existence. But women already have that choice. Everyone who willingly engages in sex knows that there is a possibility that a new human being can come into existence by their actions. I'm sorry, Paxton, but your decision to decide whether you are ready and able to bring a new baby into existence is a choice you should make before you have sex with your boyfriend. The life of a child, which begins at conception, is too high a price to pay for mere sexual gratification. Paxton also said that without abortion, women's control over their futures would be lost. In saying this, she implied that women are not strong enough to be mothers and be successful at the same time. To say that having a baby would ruin the ambitions of a young woman is anti-woman and underestimates us. We can do so much more than just have a baby or just have a career. Later on in her speech, Paxton said something really ironic. She said, "I hope you can feel how gut-wrenching it is to have the autonomy over your own body taken away from you." I completely agree. Abortion permanently and completely takes away the bodily autonomy of an individual by killing them. Just ask abortion survivors like Claire Colwell or Gianna Jessen. Today, Gianna suffers from cerebral palsy as a result of the procedure intended to dehumanize her. I think both women would agree that it is gut-wrenching to think of the possibility of having their bodily autonomy taken from them. Women should have rights over their body. They have the right to decide if it's time for them to have a child before they have sex. But they do not have the right to take the life of another person after sex. Like Paxton, I believe women should be able to pursue their destinies. Like Paxton, I believe women are strong. But I think women are even stronger than Paxton has been led to believe. Being a strong woman means persevering through difficulties. Women, we are strong enough to achieve much more than society believes of us. I want to leave you with this. If Paxton Smith's boldness was so representative of my generation, why did her story even make the news? She does not represent women like me.
So Kate and Rachel, as young Gen Z women, peers of Paxton Smith, I imagine, though you are a couple years down the road, you're not so far down the road that a graduation ceremony is unrelatable to you. How did you two feel when you heard or saw that video and the topic direction that her speech took? What was your initial response?
So my initial response was that I honestly wasn't super impressed with the speech as a speech. I think the only reason it got such huge, national level coverage is just because, people don't generally address edgy subjects in valedictorian speeches. And so I think that since that was sort of a new flashy thing, that's something that the pro-abortion media really latched onto because, it made the news. It was something that, people wanted to hear because it was kind of a new thing. I think that in terms of the point she made, I don't think that there was anything specifically special about the speech just as a speech. I think that it was mainly the fact that she just was willing to speak about it was what made it, blow up so much. And I felt like it was sort of my responsibility since I'm the exact same age as Paxton. I graduated at the same time as she did to be the one to write and present the response to her because I think that she really doesn't represent many Texas women. And I think that it's important to have the other side of the story because many, many women, many of my friends, many of my peers have a completely opposite mindset as that. They don't support abortion because they realize what it does not only to the preborn but also to the women. It really hurts women. I read a study a while back from the American Journal of Physicians and Surgeons, and one of the paragraphs really stuck out to me, that 73% of American women are pressured in some way into abortion. That's something that isn't talked about. And so I think it's important to not just repeat talking points from the pro-abortion media, but to open up the door to discussion about what's actually happening inside abortion facilities. And it's not good. It's not healthy for women or babies.
Yeah, I would say my reaction was actually fairly similar. We weren't together when we watched it for the first time, but we're housemates. We live together, and this was definitely something we talked about, and I wanted to support Rachel in her response and to help develop that response and produce a response, because I think one of the burdens on my heart through the process became speaking out to young women to say that there's something more to the story. There's another perspective. I think many of the points in Paxton Smith's speech seem to be points that I had heard older adults say before, and I'm guessing that's where Paxton Smith probably got some of those ideas. And so I think what we just wanted to say was to other young women our age, don't listen. They're not telling you the truth.
Absolutely. There are so many lies perpetuated out there that are probably part of the pressure that women feel in that situation. And I know that's probably another topic for another day, but there is this side that we want to present that really is the truth, the reality of what abortion does, of how it affects women, of how it affects a woman's heart. And so I'm really just proud of you guys for speaking out about that. That's a important thing for women to hear and to understand. So in her speech, Paxton Smith said, "I have dreams and hopes and ambitions. Every girl graduating today does. And we have spent our entire lives working toward our future, and without our input and without our consent, our control over that future has been stripped away from us." Do you agree that this law and similar pro-life laws passed in Texas did so without the input and consent of Texas women, and why or why not?
Absolutely not. In the state of Texas, our government system operates as a democratic republic. So voters, so Texas women, get to vote and choose who they want to represent them. So voters pick elected officials that have the same values that they have. And then those elected officials choose legislation to be passed. They vote and they pass legislation that is in keeping with the values of the voters who elected those individuals. So the voters absolutely gave their input and consent when they chose the legislators who had the value, the legislators who had those values to pass the Human Life Protection Act and the Heartbeat Bill this last session. But on top of that, the female voters in Texas who elected female legislators to represent them, those female legislators sponsored the Human Life Protection Act. There was a female sponsor for that bill. There was also a female sponsor for the Heartbeat Bill. So not only did Texas women give their input and consent in choosing the people to pass those bills, but Texas women were the people who actually passed those bills.
Yeah, and if that's not enough, I mean, in Texas, we have a process where when bills are proposed before the House and the Senate, the Capitol is actually open for anyone from the public, anyone from Texas, to come in and actually have a couple minutes to talk about whether they think the bill should be passed or whether it shouldn't be passed in front of legislators who are making these decisions. So they actually do have a literally open door to speak about, give their input, give their consent into this. I was there most of the hearings. I testified myself, and hours and hours of women's testimonies filled up those evenings in support of the bill. Young women like Paxton and I, and like Kate, who said that we don't want abortion on the table because it hurts us, it hurts our children. And also older women who were post-abortive saying, I don't want young women to have to go through what I did. And so they were in support of these bills. And I don't think I saw Paxton there. She had the opportunity to speak on this, and she didn't use it to my knowledge. I didn't see her there. I was there most of the time. So I think that to say that, this happened without their input, without their consent, I think it's more of a like repeated talking point than something that's actually reflected in their experiences.
It's patently false.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how would you respond to her statement that your future has been stripped away from you because of this legislation and legislation like it?
I would completely disagree. Women who are in situations where they feel like abortion is their best option, like I talked about before, that study I read previously, it shows that women don't really want it. They don't want to kill their child. They feel like that's their only option. They aren't in the right situation. They don't have the resources they need. And something that I saw in the testimonies at the Capitol was that many of these, older women who'd had abortions in their past, they talk about how I just wish that people had told us about the resources that were available, or else I wouldn't have had the abortion. And when talking points like what Paxton repeated in her speech about how, baby means failure. If you're going to have a baby, that means you can't be successful. You can't get your education. That's very unhealthy, and it's really not true. I have a friend who she got pregnant her freshman year in college, and now she's a thriving senior at Texas A&M with her child.
Wow.
And it's hard to wrap your head around how such false statements could really be repeated so often. I think that when we repeat things often enough, we feel like they're true.
Right.
They really aren't. Women are strong enough to do both. Society is really underestimating women.
We are so much stronger than that.
Right. I'm really glad you asked that question. I think that was one of the driving forces for us. And I know Rachel, when she wanted to deliver a response, and I wanted to support her in that response, was to say to young women in Texas, you're being lied to. You're so much stronger than having to choose between only a baby or only career, education, passions. Women are strong enough that we can do both. It's not an either or situation. It's a patently anti-feminist, anti-woman sentiment to say that women aren't strong enough, or that having a baby equates to failure as a woman.
Right.
That's just not true. And it was about time that some young women spoke up and said,
right.
No, we're stronger than this.
Right. I can't help but think when I hear that having a baby equates to failure, well, what definition of success do you have in mind that justifies taking the life of your own child? When you look down the road, you think 5-10 years from now, what do you see yourself achieving that would make you say, oh, okay, that was the right thing? But it's just ridiculous. I can't imagine anybody could really answer that question. There is no definition of success that could justify that. It's not either or. Women can do both. They've done both throughout all time. We're created to do both. And so I just am saddened by the fact that some women have been taught to believe that their capacity is so much less than it is. Mm-hmm. And so I think the more that we speak out on this, the more women will feel empowered to embrace everything that they have the opportunity to do and have the opportunity to achieve, including raising the next generation of leaders. That's your legacy. It's how you make a mark on the world also. It's hugely important. Well, at one point in Paxton's message, she says, I'm terrified that if my contraceptives fail, I'm terrified that if I'm raped, then my hopes and aspirations and dreams and efforts for my future will no longer matter. So failed contraceptives, rape. Two arguments that we hear, one we hear probably more often than the other. What are your thoughts on that? How would you respond to what if my contraceptives fail? What if I'm raped? That's a terrible thought. That's a violation on an epic proportion that no woman should ever have to go through. Then my hopes and aspirations and dreams and efforts for my future will no longer matter.
Yeah. I think there's a really clear distinction that we need to make, because Paxton did put those scenarios all together. They're very different situations. So how about I'll take the first one, you take the second one.
Sure.
So in terms of responding to the comment, if my contraceptives fail, then just my life is absolutely over. When two individuals willingly engage in sex, they know that there's the possibility that new life could be created as a result of their actions. Therefore, if new life is created, they are responsible for that new life. And the time to decide whether or not you're willing, ready, able to have a child, the time for that is before having sex. That's not a choice you get to make after sex, because after sex, if you become pregnant, that life has already been created. You cannot uncreate a life. Abortion doesn't uncreate a life. It ends a life. And seeing abortion as the option for as the alternative in the event that your contraceptive fails, the life of a child is just too high a price to pay for sexual gratification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, everybody knows that contraceptives are, by no means foolproof.
True.
I think that, that's something that everyone does or should know before having sex using contraceptives.
Yeah, far from fail-proof. We know women, I think most young women our age know other young women who have been on contraceptives and have become pregnant. It's not a fail-safe option, even close to that.
Exactly, yeah, it's well said. So, the other half of that question is kind of a loaded sentence there, the situation of rape, where, one of the most horrible crimes that I can think of, maybe short of just like, murder or something. In a situation like that, it's a very difficult thing to wrap our heads around. When a woman is in a situation like that and she has been so violated and she feels like she doesn't have another option, is abortion okay? And I think that's a question that we need to answer very carefully, because for example, if I were to be raped, it would be the man who did that who would be violating me and taking away my bodily autonomy. And a child that could be created from that wasn't the one who hurt me. They were completely uninvolved in that. It was by no means their action that hurt me in that way. And so if I were to respond to that hurt that came upon me to hurt my child, to make, my situation more convenient, make it an easier thing to handle, it wouldn't be just, because there are two victims here. There's the mother and there's the child. And so the mother and the child really need to kind of stick together there, because they were, both hurt by that. And ultimately, the baby doesn't suffer the death penalty for the crime of their father. It should be the father who's punished, not the child. And many women who have been raped, who've had their children, have actually described it as, the only or the most redemptive thing that's come out of the whole experience. So it's something that as a society we need to come at with full compassion, full support for these women, not driving them to options that are just going to build hurt upon hurt, actually giving them the resources, giving them the hope, giving them the love to take care of their child, because that is going to be the most merciful, the most hopeful option for both of them, not just for one of them.
So for our last question today, I would love to know, how would you guys respond to Paxton in person if given the opportunity to sit like this face to face, let's say over coffee at a Starbucks or on a park bench with a mug in hand? What would you say to Paxton Smith if you had the opportunity to connect with her just one-on-one in person?
If I got to talk to Paxton, I would just encourage her that she can do a lot more than society gives her credit for. She seems like a very strong-willed young woman. She was a valedictorian at her school. That says a lot about her. I think that a person like her and a person like any young woman is capable of pursuing two good things at once. You shouldn't have to choose between not killing your child and, pursuing your passions, education, your job. That's something that as a society we need to be more welcoming toward. We need to give women more resources. And, if I ever got to, just sit down with her and talk with her, which I would love to do, I'd be definitely open to, I would let her know about all the resources in the Dallas area. I know she graduated from a high school near Dallas. All the pregnancy resource centers that have their doors open to women like her, women, teenagers, young mothers who need help. Should she or any of her friends ever find themselves in a situation where it seems like, abortion might be the best option, there is so much help available. And, as a society, we need to not be propagating abortion as the solution or even as a good option, because it's really not. It hurts women. It ends the life of their child that would bring so much joy to their future and the future of their families. And so I would love to talk to Paxton, and I would just encourage her about all the love that's available to her, all the resources that are free or reduced cost to her should she ever need them, because there are a lot of people really willing to help, really willing to love through any situation a young woman might find themselves in.
Absolutely. Women don't have to walk through those situations alone. And there's very little messaging from society that communicates, if you find yourself in a situation where you're facing an unplanned pregnancy, there are countless organizations and people who would love to walk alongside you and support you and help you and your baby. And I think that's a good message to share, is just to educate women on that. How about you, Kate?
Yeah, I think I would want to say to her that it was really important for me to support Rachel in her response and to work on that response with her. But that doesn't mean that I don't care about Paxton. In fact, the exact opposite. Because I care about Paxton and other young women like us, I wanted to try to help be part of an effort to respond to that speech. I think what I would want to say to her is, I would love to talk with you, and that you're always welcome here.
I love that. I think we would all love to talk with her and sit with her and just dialogue around this topic. And I think you said it well earlier. We should be able to come around the table and have a conversation. Mm-hmm. This is it for our conversation. However, I want to thank you for joining us for this week's Texas Alliance for Life update. I do hope to see you back here again next week. And don't forget to sign up for the Walk for Life or to sponsor a walker at texasallianceforlife.org. Bye.